I'd like to welcome everybody for today's presentation, and I'm honored to be here to give a talk on BIM for clients, the success strategy. And this is a name I came up with, or a topic I came up with based on my experience building a BIM process from scratch in my organization. So um, I'm going to be talking you through who the ideal BIM client is. We're going to be talking a bit about information requirements and what the client should expect in terms of outcomes. And I'll be touching on a few projects what we're doing at the moment, the stages these projects are on, and I would also share my five-phased strategy with you guys as well. So I'll try to be as quick as possible, and at the end of this, we can ask questions and have a conversation around how BIM can benefit clients. So my name is Olufemi Olaiya. I'm a UK-based BIM consultant. So I work for Portsmouth City Council, and I've been in the public sector for about 8 years now, and I've built experience in facilities management, BIM, and architecture, because my background is basically architecture. And when I'm not doing my 9 to 5 job, I'm a photographer. I do architecture photography and other stuff to balance things out. So, and I work within a quite massive organization in the eastern part of the United Kingdom. And I work within a directorate that has got up to about 400 staff, and which is the Regeneration Directorate. And we've got about 7 services and 24 teams, which my department tend to fall under one of those um, services. And our vision ties into the corporate priorities of the organization, which is to create an enabling environment to support economic growth, um, to support community growth as well, and to develop the city into um, a lovely place to live. And this is all centered around us working together and collaboratively to deliver the city of our dreams. And my department is broken into 5 work streams. We represent the council as the development arm and exploring regeneration and development opportunities that benefits the city. And part of that is identifying regeneration schemes to meet all the necessary demands in terms of residential, commercial, industrial, and all types of construction developments. And we also have lots of site on in the pipeline where we do quite a bit of, one second, I need to, so where we do quite a bit of feasibility studies on potential sites for development. And we also do the project management office where we try to create a standard for the whole of the council in terms of how they manage their projects. And I am the one leading on the BIM process in the organization where we're trying to go digital. So digital transformation is a big part of what we do now. And we are trying to make sure everyone is carried along as we build on that. So I'm just going to quickly move on to why we are here today, and which is talking about the client. And the reason why I picked on the client is for about 4 years now, I've worked on the client side, trying to deliver projects with my capable team in the office. And every conversation people have regarding BIM, most times is always centered around um, how the supply chain can be efficient, how the supply chain can deliver a BIM project. Is always centered around the models they are building, the data, the information that goes into it, and how that information is exchanged. But I thought, what is the benefit for the client in all of this, or where does the client fit in all of this? Because I feel they are equally as important, because the clients are actually the ones that kickstart the process, and they provide the funding, and they are the ones right at the center of the whole process. So everything is being done because of them. So they basically drive it. So this brings me to the definition of BIM according to ISO 19650, which is a shared digital representation of a built asset to facilitate design, construction, and operation processes to form a reliable basis for decision making, sorry. And this to me basically means better information modeling or management. And I feel anyone that finds themselves within this scope where they plan, design, build, and manage assets, I feel the BIM process is for them, and it will enhance what they do, and it will yield them better results in the process. And the BIM means different things to different people. And the aim for me for BIM is to reduce costs, reduce waste, that's reduce carbon emissions, that's operational carbon and embodied carbon during construction. And it gives us a better understanding of our assets and to be able to deliver our projects a lot faster. So it's about maximizing efficiencies at all levels of the life cycle of our assets and projects. And for the ideal BIM client, it's all about what BIM means to the organization, which feeds into their corporate priorities. It feeds into their organization information requirements, which actually reinforces their goal and aspirations. And how important is BIM to the client? Why do they want it? And what benefits is it going to bring to them? What value are they planning to get from this? And that's why I put this diagram in, to just show an example of the role the client plays and how responsibilities are delegated and how they are carried out. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. All right. So, and like I said from the beginning, I'm going to be going in and out of what I do and how this fits into this presentation. And I hope that would give us a good picture of what I'm trying to talk about today. So for me, I work in the public sector, and when we identified BIM as a process that can enhance what we do, we sat down and we thought, what are our corporate priorities? What do we want from this? We did an assessment of how we work, where we are and where we are heading. And because we're a public organization, we've got the potential to drive change, because the public sector are the largest construction clients in any part of the world. I'm sure you'd agree with me on that. And we are asset owners. We own about 17,000 properties in the city, and we manage these properties ourselves. And when I was doing facilities management, I was on the front end managing this 17,000 properties. And I did that for about 4 years. And I understand what it means to get the right information to be able to carry out the operational side of things when the building is in use. So we develop properties as well. In the last five years, we have developed over 230 properties in the city. I think the number has grown now. We're developing a lot more. And we have a target to hit by 2036, which is to deliver 18,000 properties. We have no land anymore. So we sit down, strategize all the time, and see how best we can collect all the information of our assets and see which ones needs to be redeveloped, which one needs to be enhanced, and how we can maximize what we've got to meet all these targets. So this is the driver for us. And for any client, I feel they need to sit down and analyze where they are and where they are heading. And this would help them generate a strategy on how to be able to accomplish a good BIM process for their operations. And it's all about driving, getting value through process improvements, through good information exchange, and using technology as well. And this is going to, in turn, enhance collaboration between project teams and the client. And so this brings me to client information requirements. And this is not a BIM terminology, but this is how I chose to express it. So, and what requirements are needed for a client to be able to set a pace for their BIM projects and to be able to ascertain what they are looking for and how that will be useful to them and give them value in the long run. So this brings me to a breakdown of three basic entities that makes up the information requirements for the client. And these three entities are the organizational information requirement, asset information requirement, and information requirements. And these are broken down into who is developing this information, who needs to respond to it, and what are the deliverables. So the organization information requirements is actually based on the company's corporate priorities or their goals, their aspirations, and this can actually contribute to the project information requirements, which forms part of the exchange information requirements that is being put together as as part of the tender documentation that is being sent out for prospective bidders, that's contractors, lead designers, and consultants in the built environment who wants to be a part of that project or who wants to help interpret the client's demands. So, and there are three routes you can go about this. And the first one is if the project has no asset management considerations, because it's not all BIM projects that will be done to its full standards. Some do not require it. That's why a viability assessment is needed to be carried out at the very beginning to ascertain if a project is worth doing in BIM or not. And so that way you can actually move from producing your project information requirement and straight to the project information model, which is which covers the design and delivery phase of the project to hand over. And the second part is if the asset management has been considered with no project delivery consideration. So say you have an existing assets, for instance, and you want to document that. You don't need to develop certain documentations anymore. You can just do maybe like a point cloud survey or do as built drawings and detail it to the level you want and document it in your chosen folder or common data environment. And if you have a combination of both the project delivery and the asset management, and it is what developing the right information to be able to accomplish that. So, and this brings me to the information delivery cycle. So what I've done with this basically is I've overlaid the RIBA plan of works on this diagram. And this information delivery cycle cuts through 8 delivery streams, which starts from identifying the need for BIM, which is where you develop your strategies, which is where you write your business case and determine the direction you want to go, and developing documentations for tender, which is preparing your brief, which can also be termed as your exchange information requirements. And when that is sent out, and that exchange information requirement is just for the information exchange, because there's a mixture between people mix it up with the ERs, which is the employer's requirements, which is a more robust documentation of the demands the employers are looking for when they are doing their work in a traditional manner. This is how we do it in my organization. And when the tender response comes back, there's a need to assess the documentation. The tender response comes back with an execution plan or strategy by who is bidding for it. And that response is what would determine if who you want to go with. And in an organization like mine, a public sector organization, we have framework for contractors, we have framework for architects, and we send out tenders to them first. And if they can't do it, then we'll take it further out to people. So, and another thing that is worth pointing out is it also depends on the contract type as well. And the procurement route you're planning to follow for a project. And for us, we do majorly design and build. And so we break down our projects into 2 phases. That is, the first phase is which covers RIBA stages 0 to 3. And that phase takes us to planning. And after that, we develop another set of exchange information requirement and another tender for a contractor who's going to be taking over that project. And in a case where the contractor decides to novate the architect who developed the initial drawings, then all that works well for us. So we break it into two parts, which works really well for us at the moment. And this brings me to having a good understanding of roles and the role people play within these 8 streams of work. So we've got the client, who is the appointing party, and the client is the one that produces the information and sets the tone for their project requirements. And sometimes the client can nominate a consultant to do that on their behalf. And you now have the lead appointed party, which could be a lead consultant who would be the one managing the other consultants in the project team. And we now have the appointed party. That is the party the lead consultant appoints to do the remaining part of work. But this is dependent on the contract type and the procurement route. So if it's traditional, the architect might be the one doing the work from start to finish. And if it's design and build, the responsibilities might be broken into 2 parts. And this is a diagram that shows the project delivery factors, where the client is at the center of it, and the client appoints a lead consultant to carry out a project for them. And the lead consultant appoints other consultants who will carry all this out. But what makes this really interesting is the fact that when the lead consultant is responding to the tender documents, they respond in their BIM execution plan, and there's a vital document that needs to be put there, which is the master information delivery plan. This sets the tone for who is doing what, how they're doing it, when they're doing it, their discipline, and what sort of information they'll be providing throughout the course of the project. And like I mentioned earlier, in a case where the project is traditional or is straightforward enough, the architect can be novated to the next phase of work, which is the RIBA stages 4 to 6 when the project is handed over. And I've picked just these two standards for now, because everything needs to be done to a certain standards, which this is the ISO 19650 document, which is an international standard that guides the client and the supply chain on information delivery, and just gives you a basic idea of the concepts and principles. And you can find the guidance document for this on I think they're all online somewhere. And this brings me to a procurement process, which further breaks down what I've been trying to explain. When you identify the need for a BIM project, the first thing to do is to develop your business case and your brief, and you put that into an exchange information requirement. And with this exchange information requirement, you need to back that up with an information protocol document, which is a legal framework that binds the supply chain to the execution plan they've submitted to you. And this BIM execution plan can be broken into two parts. I'll touch on that much later as we go ahead. And it also talks about the tender period. When the tender comes back, there's a need for an assessment. And this assessment is what determines who is going to be going ahead to work with the client. And when this assessment takes place and the evaluation is done and the contract can be awarded, and a more detailed documentation can be put in place from the end of the supply chain or whoever has been given the contract. So, and in a nutshell, the documents the client needs to work on is the exchange information requirements with the BIM protocol, which is the legal framework that's added to it. And in some cases, not all cases, a pre-qualification questionnaire that tests the capacity and capability of the supply chain and who will be working with the client. And this BIM exchange information requirement is broken into 3 sections when the client writes it. It's a document that explicitly sets out what the client is looking for. And this is broken down into the technical section, the management section, and the commercial section. And the technical section breaks down the software platform the client wants you to use. It wants to know if you'll be using maybe Revit or ArchiCAD to develop the information, and how would the information be exchanged? Is it going to be in the IFC format? Is it going to be in the native file format, or DWGs, or whatever format is going to be? The client wants to know who's going to be coordinating this information and how will it be well coordinated, and what level of information is going to be provided at every stage of this project, because there's a need to have project milestones and assessments periodically at every milestone before moving to the next stage. And this helps to measure the progress and to see if there are any performance gaps. And the management side of this talks about the standard documentation that is required to um, set the information as it should be, the roles and responsibilities, which is what I mentioned earlier about the master information delivery plan, which sets out um, the people that will be working on the project, how they'll be working on it, the various disciplines, and when the work will be produced and what sort of information they'll be producing. And the project execution process too is very important. How this project is going to be executed is very important. And the model management as well, it's key. And the model management is the amount of information that goes into the model at every stage of the project needs to be spelled out. So, and these are the things the supply chain will respond to. And the naming convention is also very important. There has to be a way of naming your files that makes it easy to find and keeps your file in a very structured manner. And security is a big one as well. And there's a standard document for that as well. The collaboration process as well is important. Delivery strategy and the common data environment, which is like the spine of the entire information management process, which I'll touch on shortly. And the commercial part talks about the project deliverables. What are the expected outcomes for the clients? What is the client looking for at the end of all of this? So it needs to be spelled out by who's responding to that tender response. So the response is usually called a BIM execution plan. And the BIM execution plan is prepared by the appointed party, which is the lead consultant, and it sets out their proposed approach, capabilities, capacities, and competence to meet the exchange information requirement the client has stated in the last slide I just showed you. And this can be broken into two parts. If a project is starting from scratch, there has to be a pre-contract BIM execution plan that is being responded to at the earlier stages. Once the contractor or lead consultant is appointed, they can now respond with a more detailed BIM execution plan. At this point, this is where they include their master information delivery plan, and that breaks down the responsibility matrix throughout the course of the project. And I feel, to me, in my experience, this is a very key part of the documentation I look out for, and I want to be sure everything is the way we stated it in the exchange information requirements. And the master information delivery plan, this is what it looks like. Um, it can be broken down into a spreadsheet. You can see at the very top where it breaks down the file naming structure, how the files are going to be named. And in the top left-hand corner, it breaks down the details of who is providing the information, and all the deliverables that needs to be put in is there as well. The data exchange and the project code, exchange format, all this needs to be broken down, and dates needs to be set to them as well. So this part of the documentation is so important for the client to be able to ascertain where they are heading. And all this documentation we are talking about needs to be managed in a common data environment. And this is a cloud-based or digital platform where information is being exchanged in a structured manner between the project team. And this has 4 sections to it. It's got the work in progress, the shared area, the published area, and the archive. So the work in progress usually sits with the project delivery team, which is the architects, structural engineers, MEP guys, where they do their work, and the lead consultant coordinates all of this, and they check, they review it, and once the information is approved, the information is now shared for the client to be able to view it. And once the client reviews and authorizes it, then it's now published for a wider audience to be able to view it. So in my experience, we manage our own common data environment. We don't let a third party manage it for us. And the reason is it gives us control over the information that is being exchanged. And in case you fall out with your contractor sometimes, it might be a huge burden trying to get all your information back. And we use Autodesk BIM 360 Docs at the moment, which is a fantastic common data environment. It's very easy to use and straight to the point. And I've done a screenshot of what this common data environment looks like. And if you look to your left hand corner, it's got folders. This is where the folder structure is. It's been broken down into project files, where it's got the shared area, the published area, and the archived area as well. So like I said, the work in progress sits with the project delivery team. So in this area, all the disciplines have their own folder. You can set permissions for who can view what and who can't view it. So it's quite secure. And interestingly, you can view drawings, make comments, send it back to who it needs to go to, and a CD strategy is put in place as well by the client. I try to do that on every project to state how I want the common data environment to be used and how the information is going to be decimated, and how set workflows on how to share information. So this really helps to structure the information in a good way. So when all the transmittals come in, you can view your versions. If you see where it says versions, for every new file that is uploaded or document that's uploaded in a folder, it updates the old one that is there, and which is a very good way to deal with things. And another good thing is the folder structure in itself, sorry, the naming convention, you can actually capture the title block. And once the title block is captured, from the very beginning when setting up the common data environment, it can really help with when the information is being uploaded. And we try to determine this when we're having our first BIM kickoff meeting. We try to identify trainings, performance gaps within the delivery team, and what training is required, who the information would have identified who the information manager is going to be, and yeah, and we'll sell from there. And I've got a few projects to just show you very quickly some of the projects we are working on. And we identified the need for BIM about 2 years ago, and by now we're supposed to be doing just one pilot project. But interestingly, um, the the BIM implementation program in my council has taken pace so much that we have 6 projects going on side by side now, which is quite interesting. So my first project here is a project called Arundel Street. Is in the middle of the city center in the city I live in, and it used to be it's a very small site basically, and I did the initial design for this site to maximize the potential of that site and see what sort of housing typology we can put on it. So now we are developing a 76 new homes on it on 22 floors. And so on the BIM implementation side of things, We carried out a project viability assessment from the very beginning and returns on investment to see if this is going to be viable to us, because every client wants to make profit, and you need to ascertain if that's going to work out for you before you go ahead doing certain projects. So we established our project information requirements by issuing an exchange information requirement, EIR, as part of our tender documentation. And we also define our asset information requirement using a standard O&M, that's operations and maintenance documents, that is part of our traditional employers requirements to generate our asset information requirement. So this way, this is broken down into a spreadsheet that zones all the rooms and spaces in the building, and it helps us identify maintainable and non-maintainable assets, and it helps the asset and facilities managers to better understand this asset and manage it properly. And this is being managed through BIM 360 as well. And the projections for us on this project is to be able to monitor and measure progress at every stage, and to be more efficient, and to be able to use the project program to 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 to, to make the best of it, basically, and to be able to and we're able to get costings at the early stages, because we are getting all our information through a 3D model rather than doing 2D first. And the next project is Brewery House. This is a listed building, and this building has been around for a very long time. We're picking this up from a stage 4 because it's a renovation project. We have just added a floor over it, so we are providing 17 flats to tackle the housing shortage in the city. So with this one, the project has really gone far before I picked it up. So I picked it up after it had gone to planning. So because we do a design and build, it's still very good to be able to pick up the project at stage 4, where um, a contractor is about to come in to deliver the project in terms of construction. So this is ongoing at the moment. We are still in talks with the architect that provided the information from the first stage to migrate it into our common data environment and progress with. This is going to be a very interesting one. And the other one, this is a regeneration scheme. This is one of the biggest regeneration schemes in the UK as we speak. This is a project that is a once in a generation kind of project, and I'm so excited to be part of it. And this project is so massive. We're going to be providing practically a new city, a sustainable one that would have about 4,000 homes in it. And it's going to provide about 145 acres of marine employment. And we we should be able to hit or get closer to our housing targets. And work should start by 2023 on this. But we are still doing the master plan at the moment, and we are working with Gensler on this project. And so this project is actually our pilot project, and we're using it to set an example for people in the city to see how BIM can drive the desired change we want as an organization. And Edinburgh House is also is an extra care housing project, and the building has been knocked down, and there's a new building that has come on top of it. But due to privacy reasons, I can't share that model. I would have loved to share that model in the common data environment and show it to you live and show you how all the information comes in and out, and how we respond to it, and how we make comments on drawings, and how we collaborate in BIM 360 docs. And this last one is a project I'm working on, and this is in Abuja, Nigeria. I'm working in collaboration with the client and the lead consultant. So I'm playing the role of the consultant to help the supply chain ascertain how to develop their information, and how to position themselves to be able to give the client what the client is looking for. And I'm also helping the client on the other hand to understand their needs and help them maximize the potential of this project, doing it in a digital environment. And because it's Nigeria and I know how costly the implementation of BIM can be, so I'm thinking of the best way to be able to carry out this project or implement BIM on a shoestring. And hopefully I'll be able to improvise on this project. And lastly, this is the strategy I used to implement BIM till date. So in 2018, we identified the need for BIM. So we started with an awareness workshop. And after the awareness workshop, we're able to have a staff capability survey. And this helped us to identify performance gaps within the organization. And this helped us to set a strategy to for trainings, workshops, upskilling, and upgrading what needs to be upgraded in terms of hardware and software. And in 2019, we started our BIM adoption roadmap, and we did a project viability assessment on all our potential sites, and that is what has led to all the projects I've shown you now. And this year, I set up a BIM working group, picking people from every department and trying to win all the assistant directors and directors over from various directorates and departments. And this way, this has really helped. And a lot of departments are beginning to come on board and adopt the process. So we have been organizing team-focused workshops, and we have implemented BIM on 6 projects so far now. And the team is growing and all the projects are coming on board all the time. And I was able to accomplish this through this 5-phased approach. And the first approach is we developed a business case and awareness. We assessed and identified what we really need, and we rolled with it. And the second phase is the pilot projects and market testing, which is where we are now. And that seemed to be going really well as well. And the third part is digitizing Portsmouth. So what I've done is, because we have a department that deals with smart cities, and you can't have a smart city process without laying the foundation in BIM. This is my view on this. So we collaborated with a company called View City, and we've been able to generate 50 kilometers square of Portsmouth City in 3D. So this way, it helps with planning applications. It helps the planners make more informed decisions. And when the design comes to us, it helps us have a real life view of the sites we are working on. We can carry out relevant analysis and assessments while doing feasibility studies. And this is really going well. We are still on phase 3 at the moment, and everything is feeding gradually into stage 4, which is the asset information management phase on smart cities. And hopefully by 2022, we should be able to be an accredited organization for BIM. And I think that's it for me. Thank you very much for having me. If you've got any questions, we can talk about that.
I've got a question.
Okay, start.
Okay, I think one of the very obvious questions, one of the very obvious things that would pop up in an environment like ours, speaking from Nigeria, by the way, is
Yes.
the cost implication to the project when it comes to introducing BIM to a client.
Yes.
Like, it's generally known how architects charge, how structural engineers, what their fees are like. So it's easy to be able to draw up an estimate when you're commencing a project with
Yes.
some of all these consultants. But
Yes.
the introduction of BIM, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a whole new dimension. How do you convince a client from the commercial aspect or from the commercial view? I mean, aside from the eventual lifecycle cost, the initial investments that it will take to, introduce it into the project.
Yes. I think that's a very good question. And even in the developed countries, here in the UK, one of the major barriers is the lack of client demand. Um, the question some clients will ask you is, why do I need to spend this much? But what I always tell them is the benefits greatly outweighs the adoption costs, because most clients see it on a project by project basis, but they need to start to see it from a whole life cycle point of view. And one thing I always say to um, clients is, everybody is doing BIM one way or the other because it's building information management. You're managing information, but the way you're managing your information, is it structured enough? And you don't actually need to invest in um, a cloud platform like BIM 360 that will cost you a bit of money to be able to run your stuff. You can exchange your information and Google Cloud and other cloud bases. Some organizations have a dedicated server in their firm, and you just need to have a structured way of exchanging your information where it eradicates all the performance gaps that we always have when we do projects. You're not looking for files. You're adopting a process that would actually make you more efficient in the delivery of that project and what that client is getting. And if a client says, say for instance, you generate an asset information model for a client, and the client has got a spreadsheet of all his rooms, and he knows what the maintainable assets are and the non-maintainable assets are in his building. He knows when there's a repairs and maintenance job that needs to be done. He knows when a two-man is required for the job instead of a one-man job, because the amount of money you spend on a building that is already in use greatly outweighs the amount of money that is spent in delivering that project up to handover. So the client needs to understand that to be able to adopt it. I know it's not easy. I'm not finding it easy either, but I'm winning people over all the time. I think it's about educating the client on the benefits of that. Does that answer your question?
Well, in a way, it does. But I sort of like have an additional clarification, if I might say.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, you've done a very good job with this presentation, been able to share a lot of insight to some of us, or me in particular, who have very little idea of how things work.
Mhm.
And I think where I was driving at in my question was, how do you sell? Okay, for every project, you first of all start with an estimate, a budget, some
Yes,
consideration, right? And then you dumb it down to the figures for what the various consultants would probably be earning on such a project.
yes.
Okay, so with the introduction of BIM,
Mhm.
how then do you factor in, some amount or some fees for uh, your services on such a project? I understand the aspect of the project paying for it at the end of the day, or
Yes.
the life cycle costs being what it will be at the end of the day, with the
Mhm.
advantages of introducing BIM. But that initial getting your foot in the door is where the challenge is. So for instance, I'd say in a place like South Africa, there's a certain percentage, architectural architects charge for projects. So at the
Mhm.
onset, you can say, well, your building is going to cost XYZ million dollars. The consultancy fees will be this percentage of that, and then the client begins to have a general overview of what it will take. Essentially, the question I'm asking is, how do you, at a very broad level, estimate what it will cost to introduce BIM into a project?
Okay. Because I work from the client side, I know how difficult, when we first started, we had to get a consultant that was working with me, a BIM consultant. And it was showing me certain things. And when an architect bids for a job, for instance, you find people within the organization saying, no, I'm not going to pay for that. That's within my organization. Saying, no, I'm not going to pay for that service. Why should I be paying for BIM? I can do it traditionally. That's going to cost me X amount of money. But the question now is, you now have an assessment of how you've been working in the past and what BIM has to offer you. The cost of actually getting your architect to develop your project to BIM standards is actually nothing to the benefit you're going to get, because as an architect already, you do your work in 3D, don't you? You do your work in 3D, you have 3D models, you share your information, but rather than, you now have to get the architect to be able to provide that information in a very structured manner. And when the architect puts extra costs on the services they are providing, or the supply chain puts extra cost on the services they are providing. So what I do from the client side is I start to cancel things out. And most times they write things like coordination. They add extra amount of money on it. I always cancel it out, because you always coordinate, you always do design coordination anyways. Why are you adding extra money to do that? All I'm asking you is put X amount of data into this model for me, so that I'll be able to understand my asset a lot better. And I think the architect needs to start seeing things from that point of view as well. There are people here, consultants here, who would do render setting services for free in BIM. Like there are some modular designs we are doing, and by default, they offer that service for free. By default, they do all their work in BIM, because being able to develop that model in 3D, having an asset information model in 3D, does not mean the client might require it for the operational phase. But the fact that you have developed that model and you have an audit trail of information, that audit trail and that model you have developed is the key to helping that client maximize the potential of that building when it's in use. So in terms of the cost, it's dropping by the day, and it is not as expensive as people think it is. The expense in adopting BIM is in the upskilling and implementation of it within the organization, when you have to start buying new softwares, when you have to start training your staff, when you have to start doing certification courses. It's all those things that makes it expensive at the starting point. But you don't do those things twice. Once you do it, you can take your lessons learned and apply it on the next project. So that's why I said it needs to be looked at on multiple projects and entire whole life cycle experience, rather than on that project alone. So I think that's the way I've been able to work it out. I have people who are not interested in BIM in my organization, and I've been able to win quite a lot of them over lately, just by educating them on it all the time and seeing how it benefits them.
Yeah, thank you. This has been very helpful, and hopefully we might get an opportunity to do something together. Really appreciate you for doing this exercise or this workshop.
Thank you very much.
This is very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions?
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I would like you to expatiate on the criteria for determining a pilot project when you want to start the implementation of BIM. Maybe you should use Nigeria as a case study.
Okay, it's one would be, the first thing would be where the site is located. The contract type, like when you have a project, there are some certain questions you have to ask. You have to do a viability assessment, asking you questions about the initial asset information. Like when you have a site, for instance, a plain site, there will still be some sort of information on that site that informs the way you're going to do the design. And when you start to look into that, you have to factor in the commercial viability of that development. And if you're a client and you're building to sell, are you building to sell outrightly to the end user who might not need an asset information at the end of it? Or are you building to be the one that will be maintaining that asset? You're renting it out. So you weigh all those options. How much is it going to cost you? So how much extra is it going to cost you with the level of information you're going to be putting into the model? What level of information do you require at every stage to help you understand that asset a lot more? So when you break it down into a yes or no question, it's going to basically help you understand if it is viable for you or not. But most times, every developer client is trying to get financial value in what they are doing. And that question needs to be positive in terms of the returns on investment when it comes to identifying what project is being worthy or not. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
You're very welcome.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Good day. Thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you,
My
sir.
name is Henry Mabo. I'm a quantity surveyor.
Nice
So
to
I
meet
really
you,
enjoyed
Henry.
the presentation. Yeah, so I'm familiar with the RIBA stage of work.
Yes.
But what I'm particular about is, I have two questions actually. The
Okay.
first one, I'm trying to imagine, how does the BIM 7 work? Is it that you plug in an internet device on the property? How do you evaluate a building in performance, in operation? That's the first question. The second
Okay.
question is, do you guys carry out training? Is there opportunity for training?
Personally, yes, I organize training within my organization on a regular basis, and I'm helping um, a developer in Nigeria at the moment. You know, the last slide I put in. So part of that is identifying their needs and knowing their performance gap, and that's what will determine the direction you're going to be taking the trainings. Because with BIM, you need to be able to balance the amount of information you are providing. You don't want to give too much or too little, because the amount of information that is required for every BIM client is different, depending on what they are looking for. So everything has to be tailored to the client expectation at the end of the day. So it's about having like a capability assessment for yourself or and your organization, answering a few questions. Then that way you'll be able to see where the gaps are, and you'll be able to organize training to tackle that. And my own approach is always not to just come in and be the consultant, do the project, and get out. I would like to have a BIM champion in every organization. So as the work is being done, the BIM champion is learning the BIM process, because I feel that's the only way we can spread the message of digital transformation in our sector in Africa. So, and the stage 7 is when the building is in operation. Is that the question you're asking? That's your...
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
How,
So
how
when
does it work?
how it works is when the information is being... Part of the beauty of BIM is the early stakeholders engagement. So when you bring in the relevant people from the very beginning, you put a lot of effort into the design. So you're basically building like a digital twin of that building, more like you're working from the end. You know what you're expecting at the end, and that is what the amount of data you are putting into the 3D model. So rather than generate your 2D drawings, no, rather than generate your 3D drawings from a 2D, an example, you generate your 2D from your 3D model. So when the building is handed over, you know the operations and maintenance manual that comes with the handover documents that you give to the owner of the building when you are done. Most times, those things end up on the shelf and gather dust. But this time around, you are handing over an asset information model that has got all the information of the 3D model you built during the production of information when the building was being designed and delivered. So that model, you can extract all the relevant information you want from it. You can do it from Revit or any other BIM authoring tool, and it breaks it down. You know, the way you've got your schedules, that it breaks down your windows, your doors, and everything. But with this one, you can put in as much information into that model to the model of that window, um, 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 the material, wall materials, everything. You can break it down, and you can break down every room into zones, into that spreadsheet you're having, like that schedule you're having. And it breaks down every room and tells you what assets are maintainable and non-maintainable in that room. So for someone who doesn't have a 3D or an architectural software to view the model, they can have the spreadsheet and open it in Excel and still see the information they are looking for. So it breaks it down into that. So it's not so complex that it's only when you have certain kind of softwares you can view it. So it also gives you a spreadsheet, PDFs as well, and all of that. The essence of the common data environment, which is cloud-based, is to be able to structure your information in one place rather than having it all over the place. So when it's in one place, it helps you make quicker and informed decisions along the way. So at stage 7, when the building is in use, the facilities managers and asset managers use that information that is being handed over to them in a digital format, and it informs how they manage that building when it's in operation. So you have there's something called Kobe. It breaks it down into that Kobe spreadsheet format, and it tells you all the maintainable, non-maintainable assets in the building, what they are, their specifications, and it breaks it down into the smallest detail you want, depending on the information you require. Some people don't require lots of information. Some clients might tell you, oh, I only need to know what the components of the building envelope. I want information on the roof. I want a bit of information on my pipes, M&E pipes, and going into my building. And yeah, and some people might tell you, I want a breakdown of all the electrical fittings. So it depends on the client you are working with and the information they require. And that is what we'll put into the asset information requirement when we are developing it at stage 4. Does that answer your question, Henry?
Yes, it does. It does. It does.
All right.
So if I hear you correctly, it means that the BIM model allows
Yes.
you capture actual activities in use.
Yes. So you can be updated when anything changes in the building. Say, you change a window from a UPVC window to a wooden louvered window, then you can update that model to say it's been changed. So that's why at all levels, every party involved in the BIM process needs to be upskilled and trained. They need to be informed on how all these things work. And those that are not technical enough can use the spreadsheet to do what they need to do. When I was doing facilities management, we relied on spreadsheets to do everything we needed to do. And it's got a breakdown of all the information of all the assets we've got. And now everything is gradually moving into a more structured and digital environment.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any more questions? Um, have we got any more questions?
Sorry, sir. I just want to ask this question, but I don't know how. Like, what are the chances of the implementation of being advancing in Nigeria, particularly maybe Lagos State for now, and how challenging was it when Portsmouth, I mean your firm, how challenging
Yes.
was it when they started the implementation of BIM?
It was very nobody wanted it when we started. Nobody wanted it. It was a case of we have a way of working already. Why do we need to do this? And that's why we went back to develop a business case based on what everyone started to talk about. We did an awareness program. We did a survey to ask questions. People gave their honest opinion on what they felt needed to be done. Then I started to put together a strategy that would work with the situation I found myself in. And part of that strategy is nominating BIM ambassadors from different departments, and they were the key decision makers I nominated. So once every month, we would meet and discuss certain topics on BIM, and they go back and take it to their team. So I didn't need to be meeting people face to face anymore. They always take the message to their people. So if I needed to drive anything, I go to the top to drive it. And when I go to the top, from the top, they enforce it and everybody takes it on board. And gradually, it's becoming business as usual. So, and for Nigeria, I feel the only barrier I see in Nigeria or Africa is the cost of adopting BIM. Because even at the moment, it's very costly for people to have a software like Revit because it's quite expensive. And Revit has this issue of if you have an older version and someone has a newer version, the person with the older version can't open the newer model of Revit and all of that. So the cost of those softwares, and I think one of the things I'm working on is to be able to implement BIM on a shoestring in a very cheap way. I'm really working on that low key, basically trying to see if we're implementing BIM in Nigeria, how can I sell this to a supply chain or client and make them understand that, look, you won't need to spend as much as they'll spend in the Western world because I understand that there are some things that are not in place yet. But Nigeria can actually do it because if the change is going to start in Africa, Nigeria is one of the places it's going to kickstart from.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It was
You're welcome.
really insightful. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello, I'm here. So you sound far away, very quiet.
Hello, sir.
Okay, I can hear you now.
All right, sir. Yes, sir. My name is Shegun. I did the research during my master's degree regarding BIM. Yeah. So I'm currently doing a PhD now, and I'm looking for research areas where things are really on the burner right now that I can explore.
Okay.
So I don't know from your own end how you view this, and also I'm thinking of, are there any certification opportunities that one can explore?
Yes, there's actually there's a guy here now from Ziggurat, Spain. He told me before we started this webinar that they've signed an agreement with BIM Africa. So if you can link up with him, they might have a package for certification. Is he here?
Yeah, here I am, Olufemi.
Oh yeah, great. So I was just going to mention that to him.
Great. Yes, and actually I'm here and representing Sigurat that we signed an agreement with BIM Forum because we want to promote high standard qualities of master programs. So I will left here in the chat my email, and anyone who really want to know a little bit more information, and you can contact me, and I will be glad to give you more information, of course.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Olufemi, for the space.
You're very welcome. So Shegun, what do you think? Do you want to email Rodrigo? And since they already have an agreement with BIM Africa, I would advise that's the best way to go. There are lots of certification schemes out there. There's the BSI, there's the BRE. I got mine from the BRE, but I feel since Ziggurat has an agreement with BIM Africa already, it's worth exploring that because they will tailor the certification needs to what works for us, I believe. So Shegun, does that answer your question? Okay, I think we've lost Shegun. Is Moses still there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, so thank you for the session, and thanks to everyone. So end the session now, and then further questions can be sent to you via email. You can reach out to you via email. If you want to send us an email, we'll get in touch with you.
No problems. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, BIM Africa. Thank you, everyone that attended and listened in.
Sorry,
I really
BIM
appreciate it.
Africa, please, can I get your email? BIM Africa, can I get your email, please?
It's in the chat box.
I'm trying to find the chat box now, in case anyone wants to contact me as well.
Mr. Femi, I'm back here. Mr. Femi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Did you get the information from Rodrigo?
Yes, I did.
All right,
the network just went off a little bit.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Please, you didn't answer my